I gotta tell you, CNN not doing so hot these days. Not only are they losing some of their top anchors left and right, Jeff Zucker, he's out now. All of these things happening because CNN is just a cesspool of actual crime, both moral and legal, and some of the worst crimes you can possibly think of. But the other reason that they're not doing so hot is because they can't seem to understand people. It's that simple. They are so wrapped up in their own bubble, their own ideological bubble, that when it comes to trying to get why people believe what they do, it escapes them wholly. For instance, why do people love Joe Rogan so much? Why do they keep going to him? Why do 11 million people tune in to Joe Rogan every time he releases a podcast? Meanwhile, Brian Stelter can get hardly a couple 100,000. It's very annoying to CNN, and it makes them very sad, makes them very angry. And they stopped for a second to try to figure out why. And they brought in some experts here, and this is what leads to this. CNN's confusion about Joe Rogan's popularity says a lot about them. I'm just going to go over this real fast. I'm going to show them the question or the reason, or they're trying to figure it out. Someone actually gives them the answer, but then I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to show you exactly why people are tuning out of CNN in mass numbers. Why literally 80+% of their audience has abandoned them. If you're like me, you found it a bit odd that an institution whose entire existence is based on news, research, and pleasing an audience would dedicate an entire segment to figuring out why a podcast host like Joe Rogan is so popular. They went from being the most trusted name in news to being laughed at by everybody, with the exception of a few groups, Democrats, activists, such and so on. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan can just show up, whisper a strange language into a microphone, and a bunch of people will tune in. They couldn't figure out why. So they brought on this guy. His name is Gabriel Wisniewski Parks. Forgive me for butchering that. But he said what makes him so magnetic to his audience is his very vocal resistance to tribalism. This is somebody who can have on his podcast Ben Shapiro and Alex Jones and have deep and interesting, meaningful conversations with them. And then in one breath, he can have on Cornel West and Bernie Sanders and do the exact same thing. So he allows both sides of the conversation to happen. Now, this is an alien concept for CNN, who is insanely biased and insanely propagandistic. They have an agenda to push. They want you to tune in and watch. Once again, I'm going to say it again, the media is not your friend. They are a business with a vested interest in making you watch and believe what they're saying. This has led to all sorts of frustration. The fact that they can't wrap their head around this, it's so frustrating for CNN. But really, at the end of the day, what it really boils down to is Joe Rogan treats his audience like they're adults. He brings in people from all sides, from all angles, from all walks of life, and he has a conversation with them. He's not trying to do any gotcha politics. He doesn't have an agenda to push. He has opinions that he's more than willing to let you know about. He will debate, but it's not necessarily something that he's doing in order to push for one side or another. He's not trying to benefit a political party. He doesn't have really any underlying motive other than having a conversation and learning. And that's really what it boils down to. And then he treats his audience, the people who watch him, as adults. He allows them to make up their own minds. He allows them to reach their own conclusions. It's that simple. It's literally that simple. CNN does the exact opposite. CNN wants to control what you think. CNN does not allow for much in terms of challenging their narrative. They have a specific agenda they want to accomplish, and they're going to make sure that they always have the high ground when it comes to their messaging. They want to make sure that... Here's the thing. The leftist messaging oftentimes does not survive without it being in a vacuum. The moment other opinions and conversations and facts are bled in, it completely gets demolished. It's done. So they have to be very careful who they let in. Well, they've tried to do that with all of society, is the issue. Joe Rogan is a huge threat. 11 million people watch him. He is allowing all of these sides to come in and create this base of knowledge. And they can't have that. It threatens the narrative. If Joe Rogan can threaten the narrative, then how many people are going to believe what CNN says? It's incredibly dangerous for them. But that's the difference between the two. I want to also show you something that I found shocking. If you want to understand why CNN is failing so badly, why so many people are tuning out, not only is it because they don't treat their audience as adults, they don't allow their audience to come to their own conclusions, they are talking into, or they're trying to have a monologue instead of a dialogue, and all these things. You can see how their anchors, the people who work for them, have an absolute hatred, a disgust, a distaste for American people. They have a distaste for the ideas of America. And these ideas can be found they can be found outside of America, like in Canada, for instance. This idea is a danger. It's a threat to them. So they want to make sure that whatever it is that they're talking about, it has to fall in line with their ideas, or it has to be rejected. It has to be destroyed. So here we have as you guys know, the Canadian convoy. And it is all about freedom, this convoy. It is about resisting mandates. All about it. Juliette Kaim, I apologize for butchering that name. She is a CNN analyst. And here she is on Twitter. I'm just going to go ahead and read this to you. She is addressing the trucker convoy. Wall Street Journal tweets out, footage shows truck and gridlock on the Ambassador Bridge, a key trading link between the U.S. and Canada. It was temporarily closed early Tuesday amid growing protests against Canada's COVID-19 vaccine mandates. Juliette tweets this. The convoy protest, applauded by right-wing media as a, quote, freedom protest, is an economic and security issue now. The Ambassador Bridge links constitutes 28% of annual trade movement between U.S. and Canada. And then she says this, slash the tires, empty gas tanks, arrest the drivers, and move the trucks. So she is basically saying, hey, property damage. Maybe that's the way to go. We destroy their trucks, okay? Maybe even confiscate them. We arrest the drivers, okay? She goes on to suggest that, we make it worse for them by taking away their licenses. This woman effectively just wants to use force to get what she wants, to get what her side wants, more accurately. This is a CNN analyst. Now, CNN has a really bad history of, like I said, turning against the American people. They think that, if you're a Trump supporter and you're white and you're male, then you're one of the biggest terroristic threats to the nation. This is the same CNN that stands in front of burning buildings. And their anchors or their reporters will sit there and tell you that despite the fact that they're burning down entire neighborhoods, that they're peaceful. These people do not like you. These people have an agenda that they are fiercely loyal to. And they will disregard the moral high ground. They will advocate for straight-on tyranny. They'll advocate for destruction. They'll advocate for violence if it means that they get what they want. And every time that they do all of that horrible stuff, it is always against you. That's why CNN fails. That's why CNN has lost its audience. It's because it has effectively turned against its audience. Now, you're literally more likely to run into a Wiccan than a CNN viewer. It's their own fault. But this is what happens whenever you enclose yourself in a bubble, an ideological bubble, and don't let anyone else in. You truly believe that what you're doing is right and good. You start to ignore every other story, every other person, every other feeling, every other angle. You make yourself ignorant and self-important. But you're not. You're just a mess. You're just a mess of a human being at that point in time. Case in point, Juliette Kaim actually advocating for destruction, for seizing trucks, for taking away licenses, for ruining lives, just because these people disagree with her. and they're taking it out on these people trying to come down on them and make their lives harder with a peaceful protest. I thought peaceful protests were great. Apparently, it has to be a right kind of protest. If it's the wrong kind, violence, destruction. I'll see you in the next video. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or learned anything, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so you're made aware when we upload new content. See you in the next video.